Hi, I'm John Atack.
I'm Sam Atack.
And it's too darn hot.
Yeah.
So you find us in the downstairs studio instead of the upstairs studio, with a lovely poster of Jimi Hendrix made by Spike, our resident artist. And we're going to talk about a man who some people call Dominic Cummings, which is a slight. His name is actually Demonic.
Demonic.
It's funny, a friend of mine grew up in the Church of the Latter-day Saints, who are called the Mormons by many, and will change his surname in this story. And years later, he was living in a sort of trailer park, mobile home sort of thing. And two elders of the Mormon faith came looking for him. And he overheard them saying, "Do you know where Demonic Smith lives?" His name was Dominic.
Yeah.
And Mr. Cummings' name is Dominic also. Dominic Cummings is the senior political advisor to the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom. Bojack Horseman, Boris Johnson. And he has a degree in ancient and modern history from Oxford, which is not an easy thing to do. He is a fluent Russian speaker, which in years past would have caused our intelligence services to call him a communist. He worked in Russia for 3 years, which in years past would have caused our intelligence services to call him a traitor.
Yeah.
But he's not a traitor. He's a political advisor. He was the advisor to Michael Gove, who is Boris Johnson's great mate in the Let's Leave the European Economic Union campaign, the European Union. He was advisor to Gove as Education Secretary, and he wishes the UK to become a meritocratic technopolis. And you can look that up for yourself. What a meritocratic technopolis is. Because he wrote a 230-page paper about it, and in the 10 minutes I had to prepare by looking at Wikipedia for this, hey, come on, we all do it.
Yeah.
I didn't quite manage to finish that paper,
Oh, God.
but it did have meritocratic technopolis in it. The Prime Minister in the same party, the Tory or Conservative and Unionist Party of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Mr. David Cameron, said in 2014 of Dominic Cummings that he was a career psychopath, which, coming from David Cameron, is pretty rich, frankly. He was the senior advisor to the Michael Gove at the Department of Education, and therefore the expert who advised Michael Gove when Michael Gove said, "We've all had enough of experts." Obviously, Michael Gove, if he needs his wiring redoing, calls in the local butcher, because we've all had enough of experts.
Yeah.
So, very sensible people. In 2012, £25,000 was paid to a female civil servant because she'd been bullied by Dominic Cummings and another member of Michael Gove's team. So, bit of a bully occasionally. He is the man behind the Leave campaign. Now, if you're not British or European, that may not mean a great deal to you. It was run in parallel to the Trump election campaign, and a man called Robert Mercer funded both Trump, he was Trump's principal funder, and ran two companies, or was involved in the running of Cambridge Analytica, who are well known for stealing Facebook information and claiming that they had 5,000 pieces of information on every United States citizen by this illicit means. And they were therefore able to use a new form of spin marketing, public relations, propaganda, advertising, call it what you will, selling, which was niche targeted.
And Aggregate IQ was the other one.
That's right. Robert Mercer also invested in Aggregate IQ, which was behind the Leave campaign. Cummings worked closely with them, and there is a quite remarkable play, which has Benedict Cumberbatch in, also known as Sherlock Holmes and many other things, one of our great actors, which really does get into the nitty-gritty of what Dominic Cummings did to push the vote. Now, the simple thing that got me was that by niche marketing, if you put out something that says, we will give you £1 million if you can get the scores for all the soccer matches on a Saturday, that you get lots of people, and there's a 1 in a billion chance of actually getting them all. So not much chance of losing £1 million. And Boris could probably part with £1 million; it wouldn't bother him, because rich people are in charge, aren't they? Plutocracy or cacocracy. That's my word of the week. Cacocrats, the government by the worst possible people, which I think we are suffering in many places in the world at the moment, very sadly. But plutocracy, the rule of the rich. I'd like to point out that Boris Johnson is the 20th Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. In fact, it wouldn't have been that, would it, back then? But he's the 20th Prime Minister of England to have gone to the school Eton, which is the most expensive private school in England, or in Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. This is getting very confusing. So we had a situation where Boris Johnson and Michael Gove broke with the leadership of the Tory party and said, we want to leave the European Union. David Cameron had made this silly statement that he'd allow a referendum because he was so confident he'd win. Ha ha. And the campaign was run by Dominic Cummings, and Brexit, an uncivil war. Brilliant play transferred to the screen, which is on
Netflix and All 4 for free if you can't afford Netflix.
That's right. And if you can't get into All 4, you can use a Tor browser, which will stop your nation being recognised, and you can get into the British All 4 system. There's a little bit of a cheeky tip for you. So he's a Russian speaker, spent 3 years in Russia. And his former tutor at Oxford compared him to Robespierre, the man who ran the reign of terror during the French Revolution. Chopped off a lot of people's heads. I don't know why he made that comparison, but he was a history tutor. He would have known closely about not only Robespierre, but also Dominic Cummings, the career psychopath. The two things that he gave to this campaign that we know about are the slogan, which I personally think is the most brilliant PR slogan of all time. And that slogan was, "Take back control." Because that's got to resonate with everybody, because we all lost control somewhere around the time of our teens. And we're going to show you a little sign now.
Take back
control.
Yeah.
So it caused a sort of subconscious resonance in people, I think, that, hey, I would like to take back control. So that was amazing, and well done on manipulating people. I don't think Goebbels ever came up with anything quite so good. Ein Reich, Ein Volk, Ein Führer. It doesn't have the same resonance, does it?
No.
Take back control. The other thing he contributed was the insistence that the one piece of propaganda to be used in this campaign, written on all the tour buses and everywhere they could, posters everywhere, was that leaving the European Union would provide another £350 million, that's about $400 million a week, to the National Health Service. This was what we know in England as a bald-faced lie. Just like to put that in. But propaganda does work that way. It's also suggested that he said that we should use the herd method of controlling herd immunity, of controlling the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2, as it's also known. And this statement, which has been denied, was made. If that means some pensioners die, too bad. So we don't know.
Chris.
But it said that he was one of the ones who pressed for a lockdown about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the medical advice had been given. But he was one of the ones who pressed for a lockdown, and then he created a scandal by actually breaking the lockdown, which made news all over England, that he believed his wife might be ill with COVID-19. He went and visited her at home, then went back to work. So that was the first breach of the rules that he had helped to make. Boris Johnson didn't sit on the so-called SAGE advisory committee, but he was there making the rules. And lockdown was, an idea he pressed for. Then he violated it then. They thought his wife had COVID-19. They didn't have her tested because the government had already given up on testing, which is the successful policy used in South Korea that kept their death toll down below 300. Ours has now exceeded, I think, 41,000. So, bit of an error there. He then decided to drive his wife, I believe it was 260 miles north to his parents' house, which violated the lockdown. As Boris Johnson had said, I've got a letter from Boris Johnson, it went to all of us. Everyone must stay at home. Wasn't like parentheses, with the exception of my political advisors, And it turned out that, in fact, so he drove his wife and his 4-year-old, afraid that there'd be nobody to look after their 4-year-old, because being rich people, they couldn't afford a nanny or any of that kind of stuff. One can see the perilous position that they were in their massive house. They couldn't possibly have hired somebody if they did catch it. They hadn't checked that they did have it, and his wife, in fact, didn't have it, but he did. During while he was in recovery, he actually drove his wife and 4-year-old child to hospital because they believed the child had COVID-19. But he says he didn't get out of the car. So it was okay. The child, thankfully, didn't have COVID-19. He then, because his wife suspected, this is according to Wikipedia, which is my main source, which is a bad source of information on a lot of things, I'm afraid to say. You look up the Moonies in Scientology on Wikipedia, you will not get the truth. We don't need anybody to check this stuff who's expert, just let them do it themselves. But according to Wikipedia, that fantastically accurate source of information, his wife thought that his eyesight might not be good enough to drive them home. So to test his eyesight, they drove 30 miles. There are things called eye tests, Dominic. And went to Barnard Castle, where they were spotted by a bloke who put down the number plate. And so that was called a minor breach by the police when they were asked to investigate it. And this is the guy that wanted a lockdown. So 44 members of the Conservative government asked for him to resign. 71% of the public, when surveyed, believed he had broken the rules that he'd helped to make. And 59% of the public demanded his resignation. But the Conservative Party, headed by Boris Johnson, decided that it was okay for him to breach the regulations. Now, so we're going to let Sam do some talking for a change now. It doesn't happen often in this household. What was it that inspired you to do this wonderful work of art that you were just about to show us? And this is part one of what we're going to show. Well, you've already seen the little sign.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But this is Boris Johnson as a chicken. So here we are. Boris Johnson as a chicken. Right. So you can tell it's Boris Johnson because he's a chicken.
And the yellow wig with little horns in it.
Yeah, the little horns. Do notice the little horns. We will have some lovely. Spike will put some lovely. He's falling over.
Yeah.
And the idea was, if you could you pass me the Dominic Cummings? The idea was that we've got to go the other way around. That we could have this little fishing line attached to Boris, and this is Dominic Cummings, degree in ancient and modern history, fluent Russian speaker, and advisor, senior advisor to the leader of our darling countries, our united countries. And underneath we would do this, and so now we have.
Yeah.
And the suggestion that we would like to make is that Boris Johnson should take back control from his own political advisor, Robespierre. Sorry, Dominic.
Dominic.
So, tell me about the construction of this quite fabulous piece of work. How long did it take you to do? years?
I didn't actually keep track of this one.
Yeah, it's
If
hard
we
to
do.
keep track, isn't it?
Probably 5 days, something like
About
that.
5 days of
Yeah.
work went into making
Right.
the Prime
It was
Minister as a
after
chicken.
Seeing Henri Dormier's work and realising I wanted to make fun of some people, and he seemed like an easy target, as Stuart Lee called him. So
Stuart Lee's quite an easy target too.
yeah,
but,
he is.
I mean, as far as Americans are concerned, who's Stuart Lee?
Exactly.
And I mean, we've recently, and I think quite rightly, they're suggesting that the slaveholder and leader of the Confederate Army, Robert E. Lee, might not be the proper person to memorialise, particularly in townships where the majority of the school kids are black. Does it? And we were thinking that maybe they could rename it Stuart Lee
Yeah.
High School after the fantastic British comedian, the genius British comedian. But I don't know. I mean, he's what's called a snowflake comedian here, which means that he is politically correct, if very rude at times.
But in a politically correct way.
Isn't it fantastic?
Okay.
Yeah, he's rude about people and not politically correct.
Yeah, almost the politically correct psychopath. He's developed the character.
Almost.
Yeah.
Narcissist.
Narcissist, yeah.
Psychopath, I think.
Well, I don't. Look closely at him.
I have done.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And what about this little fellow? This is a quite intriguing little fellow, and we will see. I'll admit, I'm a painter, and my real subject is art history. And I did say, having seen quite a number of these fabulous works, that Henri Dormier, the great 19th century French illustrator, cartoonist, and artist, would inspire. He's got poor old Boris. He's standing on his head now. It's just not fair. Just leave him. Just leave him.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Leave him alone.
Okay,
Stop fiddling with
okay,
Boris.
okay.
So here we are.
You're talking about art history.
Yeah, I was talking about Henri Dormier, the astonishing, because it just seemed that there was sort of satirical aspect to what you were doing, and we're rather hoping that people will love this so much that they'll throw money at us.
Give me money.
Yeah, the best things in life are free.
Except for money.
But I don't care too much for money, as the Beatles. They sang both of those songs.
Yeah.
It's very confusing, isn't it? They did care too much for money, and Ringo Starr went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can go bankrupt on an income of £9 million a year.
It is impressive.
$12 million a year. He had a bit of a drinking thing though going on then, so
yeah,
he's probably drinking huge bottles of expensive brandy. So we've now become a political channel.
Yeah.
And we fully intend to attack anybody and everybody we can. We'd like to apologise sincerely, but we can't.
No.
And so we're going to apologise insincerely to Dominic Cummings, little fellow here with fishing rod.
Yeah.
We're hoping that he will actually buy this.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah, and put it on his wall. And that would show that he's got a sense of humour, which we deeply doubt, having seen him talk to the press and be an arrogant, what's the term, dickhead.
Dickhead.
Yeah. So that's... would you like to add anything to this colloquy? Ooh, colloquy.
No, not really.
Really?
Part of his tail's fallen off.
Part of his tail has already fallen off, which shows you just how defective our political advisors are.
There you
Can't
go.
even keep their tails. I am John Asack,
I'm Sam Ede.
and we thank you very much for your company.